This is not a technical dispute buried in legal language, and it is not a symbolic warning. The Central Bank of Russia has issued its most explicit signal yet that the financial confrontation between Moscow and the European Union is entering a dangerous new phase. By declaring it is prepared to defend itself by all means against plans to seize frozen Russian assets, Moscow is reframing the sanctions battle as a direct challenge to the foundations of international finance, sovereign immunity, and the global rules-based order. What happens next could redefine how economic warfare is conducted worldwide. For the first time since Russian reserves were frozen in 2022, the Bank of Russia has publicly outlined how it would respond if the European Union moves from freezing assets to actively seizing or reallocating them. According to official statements, the central bank considers any uncoordinated use of its gold and foreign exchange reserves to be illegal under international law and a violation of sovereign immunity. It has warned that it will pursue legal action without prior notice if EU initiatives progress, signaling readiness for a broad and sustained legal counteroffensive. This is a marked escalation from earlier statements, which focused primarily on preparation rather than execution. At the core of this confrontation are plans unveiled by the European Commission to support Ukraine's financial needs for 2026 and 2027. These plans include mechanisms that would allow the EU to borrow against frozen Russian assets held within European financial institutions, most notably at the Euroclear depository. One option involves EU borrowing backed by the assets, while another proposes what has been described as a reparations loan, under which frozen Russian funds would be transferred to Ukraine as a loan to be repaid only if Russia eventually pays reparations. According to EU officials, these proposals are supported by a package of legal safeguards designed to shield member states and financial institutions from retaliation. From Moscow's perspective, these safeguards do not change the fundamental issue. The Central Bank of Russia argues that using its reserves without consent sets a precedent that undermines the principle that central bank assets are protected regardless of political disputes. Analysts note that this principle has long been a cornerstone of global financial stability, ensuring that reserves held abroad are insulated from political pressure. If this barrier is broken, Moscow warns, no country's reserves would be truly safe in future geopolitical conflicts. The Bank of Russia has made clear that its response would be comprehensive. It has stated it would challenge EU actions across all available legal forums, including national courts in multiple jurisdictions, international arbitration tribunals, and international judicial bodies. Importantly, it has also emphasized the enforcement of any favorable rulings within the territory of United Nations member states. This signals a strategy not limited to symbolic legal filings, but one aimed at tangible consequences, potentially targeting assets, contracts, or financial flows linked to European interests abroad. For the European Union, the stakes are equally high. Seizing or leveraging Russian central bank assets would provide critical financial support to Ukraine at a time when donor fatigue and budgetary constraints are becoming more pronounced. However, analysts warn that such a move could expose European financial institutions to long-term legal risks and retaliation, particularly in jurisdictions outside the EU, where Russian counterclaims might find traction. The European Commission has acknowledged these risks, which is why its proposals emphasize legal protections and collective decision-making through qualified majority votes. This confrontation also highlights a deeper shift in how sanctions are evolving. Freezing assets has long been considered a reversible pressure tool, while outright seizure represents a more permanent and punitive measure. Crossing that line could normalize asset confiscation as a tool of statecraft, potentially encouraging similar actions in future conflicts involving other major powers. Observers note that countries outside the Western alliance are watching closely, as the outcome may influence how they diversify reserves and choose where to hold them. Russia's legal preparations have been underway for some time. As early as 2023, Central Bank Governor Elvira Nabiullina stated that Moscow was nearly ready to pursue legal action, but faced difficulties securing legal representation due to sanctions-related restrictions. Senior officials have since confirmed that multiple lawsuits across different jurisdictions are being studied. The latest statement suggests those preparations are now sufficiently advanced for Moscow to act swiftly if EU plans move forward. The broader geopolitical implications extend well beyond Russia and Europe. If major central bank assets can be seized and repurposed, it could accelerate efforts by countries to reduce reliance on Western financial systems. Analysts say this could strengthen trends toward alternative payment systems, reserve diversification, and the use of non-Western financial infrastructure. In the long term, this may weaken the leverage that sanctions currently provide to Western powers. As the EU prepares to debate these proposals at an upcoming summit, the message from Moscow is unmistakable. Any move to seize or use Russian reserves will not go unanswered, and the response will unfold not only through political channels, but through courts, financial markets, and international institutions. This is no longer just about funding Ukraine. It is about the future rules of economic warfare and whether the global financial system can remain neutral ground in an increasingly divided world. Prime News will continue to follow this critical development as Europe weighs its next move and Russia prepares its response. Subscribe to Prime News for in-depth geopolitical analysis and join the discussion by telling us this. Does the seizure of sovereign assets strengthen global accountability, or does it risk destabilizing the international financial system itself?